is a new Christmas dramedy directed by Alexander Payne starring Paul Giamatti. In this movie, Paul Giamatti plays this very grumpy, old, bitter, senile, old history teacher for this all-boys prep school. Christmas vacation is just about to start, which means all the faculties and students are going to go home for break. However, every year, someone has to stay behind. Someone has to watch over all of the students that stay on campus during Christmas break because they have nowhere to go. They're known as the Holdovers. Paul Giamatti has been selected to do that, so he's stuck with all these boys. Namely, he's stuck with one in particular, played by Dominic Sessa, and it's ultimately a movie about the two of them and how a sort of bond and relationship is going to, however unlikely it might have been, form between the two of them. Right out the gate, Paul Giamatti is excellent in this movie. You're hearing that he could get some Oscar buzz. It wouldn't shock me at all. I mean, he's so good in this movie at playing this guy who's just bitter, angry, and just fed up with the world. I mean, you don't really feel like he cares that much for his job. He's super tough. He's super hard on his students. Doesn't really get along with faculty. And you just look at the guy, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm thinking history teacher is not what you wanted to be when you grew up, buddy. But what I really appreciate that this movie does is there are layers to this character. There's a reason why he kind of feels the way he does about his job, about students, about the world. And the movie does an amazing job at peeling back those layers and helping you understand why he is the person that he is. Also, Dominic Sessa in this movie, I gotta give this kid props. I don't think he's been in any movie before this one. I think this is his, at least, movie debut. He crushes it here, and it has me wondering where he's been hiding this whole time. Because what I initially love with him right out the gate is he's not exactly the most likable person on earth ever. I mean, he's kind of self-entitled, he's kind of a punk, he kind of does whatever he can to try to push the teacher's button, other students' buttons. But very early on, it does give you a reason to sympathize with him, to feel bad for him, because he kind of just gets dumped on by his family. They're kind of just like, hey, you gotta stay behind on Christmas. Sorry, you can't come home. Which is real shitty news to any student. I mean, who wants to remain behind at school during Christmas vacation? No one does. So you feel for this kid. And the fact that Paul Giamatti and Dominic Sessa are stuck with each other, they openly don't like each other, yeah, it makes for initially a lot of humor in this movie. Kind of like a sort of Breakfast Club kind of vibe between the principal and Bender. Like, the student at this point is bored out of his mind, doesn't want to leave, so he's just finding ways to piss off the teacher any way that he can. The teacher's just giving this kid as much shit, as much of a hard time as he can give him. Like, just pushing each other's buttons in any way, shape, or form that they can towards each other. And it definitely makes for some laughs. But what I really appreciate that this movie does is it does find such a clever way to show a real development of a bond between these two. When it starts off, they both kind of just bail the other one out of situations that could lead to really bad things happening to either of them. They both kind of just have each other's back in that sort of begrudging way, and then some kind of at least respect or understanding starts to brew between the two of them, where it's kind of like, all right, man, I get you. And through that mutual understanding kind of leads to a little bit more of a, all right, let's try to get to know each other more as people. Let's learn a little bit more about each other. And through that, that's where the drama and the really emotional aspect of this movie really kicks on strong, because the two of them, you kind of see just a couple of really broken and damaged individuals in both of them for various reasons. And it helps them realize that they are not that different. Like, it really is a great illustration of like what it's like to get to know people. It's like you could meet someone, hate them, think you have nothing in common with them. But if you take that moment to sit down and get to know one another, especially when you have no choice but to, you might realize you have more in common than you think. Also, Davine Joy Randolph is another standout in this movie. She plays the cafeteria lady for the school. She's also staying behind during break to serve as the cook. And what I really like about her is she kind of initially serves like the mediator between the two of them when they're not getting along. You know, she feels like she can at least somewhat connect with both of them. And she's also someone who's been through a lot of tragedy and suffering, and she's been through a really hard time in her life. And again, what you kind of see here is ultimately this family that is forming between the three of them. They've all been through tough times. They've all been through tragedy. They all have things they're trying to cope with and deal with. And the fact that they're all just stuck with each other at this school with nobody else around, you really do see some kind of family bond forming here. And that's why I gotta say this right now. By the final act of this movie, really the final third of this movie, it is straight up just emotionally heavy the whole way. You really do delve very deep into the pain, into the loss, into everything that these characters have dealt with. And by the end of the movie, you do see just how much they all really have grown to care for one another. Just the sacrifices they're willing to make, the things they're willing to do. It just, man, it hits you right into your heart. And as a result, it is a movie you walk away from feeling emotional, but feeling warm, feeling touched. It makes you feel the way you want to feel after watching any kind of Christmas family movie. And I really do think this movie is destined to become a new Christmas classic, new family classic. It's definitely a movie that I think is going to get a lot of attention as the holidays just continue to go on. I could see this easily becoming the next big Christmas movie that people are adding to their collections. So all in all, The Holdovers, it's probably the most heartfelt movie I have seen all year. Paul Giamatti crushes it in this movie. He's gonna get Oscar buzz, well deserved. Dominic Sessa, be on the lookout for him going forward. He's gonna get a lot more work for himself. I love seeing the relationship and the dynamic and the bond that grows between the characters in this movie, namely the two of them. It's funny when it wants to be, it's touching when it wants to be, it's emotionally very heavy when it needs to be. I love the setting of this movie too. The movie takes place in 1970. It looks like it was filmed in the 1970s, so it felt very old-fashioned and very classic. I appreciate that. Some might say it's a little systemic and formulaic, and it absolutely is, but you know what? If it works, it works, especially for a movie like this. In the end, I heard someone out there say this could be the next Dead Poet Society. You know, you have these students, they have this teacher, the teacher impacts their lives in ways they didn't really expect to, namely one in particular, and by the end, it emotionally just absolutely hits you in your heart and you're just thinking about it forever. In the end, we haven't gotten a movie like that in a very long time. I feel like this movie could be that. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video, and as always, don't forget to leave comments, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.